And I think it was just that conversation, right? To when you start to ask them questions about how they see property management, you quickly can tell if you're in alignment. If they're focused on the guest or talking a lot about the guest, if they're starting to talk about, amenities and dollars and cents, then we know that they're not the right property manager. But if they're talking about experience, they're talking about anything that they'll do to make that guest have a great stay, then we've got a really good partner.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. And I'm Grace. And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sean Moore, and I'm here with our Friday interview episodes with short-term rental investors. And today is a treat for me. I hope it is for you guys. There's two of my favorite people in the whole world, Troy and Misti Petrie. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks so much, Sean. Right back at you.
Absolutely. We'd love to.
It's just fun. You guys have quite the journey. You guys are absolute rock stars and have become just killing it in the short-term rental game. We're going to get the backstory, but you guys are always I know I'm always going to get a big smile from Misti and Troy and just this positive attitude, willing to climb any mountain, take on any challenge. And I don't ever feel like you guys have a bad day. And I know you deal with plenty of stuff that a lot of people would let it turn into a bad day. And that's why you're some of my favorite people I ever talk to, because I can't ever walk away from the conversation just being energized and happy. And so I'm excited for everybody to listen in on the conversation. So this is fun for me.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for saying that. We have bad days. Trust me.
For sure.
We just feel like they're better.
You handle them really well. I'll tell you, you guys know how to come out on the bad stuff really well. Because every time I talk to you, it's just it's awesome. I love it.
Oh.
So what I like to do, you guys, and you guys know this, but for those of you that are listening, we'd like to start with the backstory. I like to hear what's the backstory? What got us interested in short-term rentals? I mean, what was the real estate background? I mean, that's not what we've done full time. So kind of what pays the bills, and then what got you interested ultimately in real estate and then rolling over to short-term rentals?
Yeah. So really great question. And I think it's been probably close to 5 years that we've been on the podcast. So it's really great to reconnect with you after, even more years of this next part of the journey. But we started out, actually, Troy and I did in long-term investing. So we did long-term rentals down in actually the Tucson, Arizona area when we lived down there. And we had, a whole portfolio. And then over the years, we kind of weathered through the 2008 crisis like so many investors did. And after coming out of that, we realized, what? Our passion is around, we do wild and crazy things, Sean, as you said. We love to have lobster parties at the house because Troy's from Maine and he can't get enough lobster.
That's right.
And he decorates our house like the Griswolds, at Christmas. We have crazy Christmas lights, and we just won the town show for last year. So he was really proud of that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we always
awesome.
do wild and crazy things. And that's when we had this epiphany that, you know what? Long-term rentals they're a great asset class, but it really didn't tap into what our strength was. And our strength is that it's the experience piece. So that's how we found you. And when we kind of clicked the short-term rentals and experience and what we love to do with travel and making memories, it was this aha for us. Wow, we have found our asset class that speaks to us like no other.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's so fun. You guys are about experiences. You guys are you're always on the run. You're always doing something. You guys are the fun parents, right? Your kids are I'm always dude, we're going somewhere at some point with you two. And so that, totally makes sense why you rolled into short-term rentals to me. Got attracted to this asset class back in the COVID years, right? It was in 2020-ish, right? Was it
2020?
Yeah. Yep. Was it before COVID? Was it early 2020, or was it during right in the middle of it?
It was October of 2020 is when, we joined Vodacy, I think in September of 2020, and we closed on our first property in October of 2020.
So right in the thick of it.
And you're based in Colorado, and then we're gonna show you guys or talk about the how geographically spread out our portfolio is. You guys are literally covering the U.S. from tip to tip, from Alaska to Florida, right? And so it's so talk about where we started and how that journey kind of began, because that wasn't too far.
Yeah. So our first one is, as Troy said, was in Colorado. So that's where we live, just a couple hours from the house. And I would say that was a great journey just because you got to learn it from the inside out, and it was doable, right? You could get to the property if you needed to. But then, as you said, we took a little bit of an adventure. So the next property was the height of COVID. Everybody, as you know, was trying to get on the short-term rental bandwagon. Markets were hot. So we went to Florida, where it's even hotter. Yeah. And we looked at all the way up and down the coast there on the Gulf side is kind of where we knew we loved to travel. It was an easy flight from Denver. And we ended up on Marco Island is where the top market that we landed on. But the market was super hot, right? Tons of deals, tons of inventory, but tons of people also trying to buy as well. So we actually did something a little different. We bought a foreclosure, and we decided to, it came with rats and cockroaches. Those were included for free. And so we ended up gutting the entire thing, stripped everything down. Troy went and literally, blasted all the tile out, everything, down to basically the studs, and rebuilt it. So that was definitely a completely different journey. And I guess what else would you say about that
so
one?
From there, right, that was 2021. So we just happen to have a property every year since then. So in 2022, Misty was on an airplane talking to some old guy, and he was bringing up Alaska about how great it was. And she comes home, and she's like, Alaska sounds awesome. I'm like, okay. I mean, I've never been, but sure. Let's take a look at it. And she literally, like, within a week, she's like, I found our property. I'm like, okay, let's look at it. So we looked at it, and it had that it factor. Like, it was a cool log cabin in Fairbanks, and it was overlooking the valley, and the northern lights were, very prevalent right there. And so everything seemed to be great. Put an offer in, got accepted, run our way to Alaska, right, as far as like closing and everything. And then it appraises out, and it doesn't appraise out for enough. It's much lower. And now we get with the owner, the seller, and he's unable to negotiate. He just refuses to negotiate, kind of a difficult person. And so we ended up just walking away from it. We're like, okay, we're done with Alaska. We're not going to do it. And so we went back to one of the other markets we're looking at in Georgia, Helen, Georgia. It's, I don't know how familiar you are with Helen, but it's like a little Oktoberfest. Like, it's a little Germany, It's got the old German buildings, and it's just a great experience for families and adults. It's a good time. And so then we ended up closing on a house there, and it's a brand new house. It's a year old. We take all the furniture that's in it. It's beautifully designed, very modern. It's got Pottery Barn and all West Elm, like very high-end stuff. And we get rid of all of it. And we buy all new furniture and German style themed. And we make this whole house a German style theme. Nobody else in the market was doing it. It was just an experience that we thought would be killer at that property. Yeah. The back deck was okay. It was like 10 foot wide, had a hot tub on it. I'm like, let's make this thing 4 foot longer. So we add an extension on a deck, put a roof out there, a fireplace, have a place for people to really enjoy it. And, end up being that property, we doubled the revenue that it did the year before because it was a current short-term rental. Yeah. And so that was it, right?
The cool thing about that one too, Sean, is I think everybody sometimes thinks you have to have like the best property, right, in the market. You don't. Like, this house is honestly just a box. It is not special. Yeah. It's not on the river like everybody else is. And I know that you've got some on the river there too, and in a different market that's close by. So I think that's what's really exciting is you don't always have to have the best of the best home. You just have to create the best of the best experience, and you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we built a wall in one of the rooms. We made like a secret game room. Like, you move the mirror and there's a game room behind it. And so, like, it's just fun things for kids there. So, it's funny though, is the story is the day we closed on that house, my Alaska realtor called me and said, hey, do you still want that house? Because the seller's willing to go down to that price and be done with it.
He's back.
So we looked at each other.
Weird,
like,
huh?
You probably have had that happen.
Just close on this house that night. And we're like, well, we got the funds. Let's do it. So we did it. So we bought this house in Alaska, and that was in 2023, right? Mm-hmm. So after I did the deck and stuff in Georgia, I flew to Alaska a couple months later, and that house, we redid a lot of it. Like, I ripped out the island, redid the hall, the flooring, redid the shower. Was the bathroom was the weirdest bathroom you've ever seen layout in the upper floors, and we regutted it, did the whole thing, and got that property online.
Yeah, and really fast.
And that property's been awesome.
Yeah, and I think that market, interesting thing on that one is like it's a bucket list place for most people to go, right? And so it speaks to exactly what we do in Vodacy of like creating these bucket list experiences. So that was, and oddly, not a lot of people were doing that in that market. So it was a really fun play to go to Alaska and find a lot of things that they're complicated in Alaska, but you can always figure it out too.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a little scary, right, for people, Alaska?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, Alaska is one of my favorite places on the planet. I mean, I love Alaska. Everything's just bigger and more wild. I mean, you guys live in Colorado. I live in the mountains in Utah. We're used to the Rocky Mountains. It's a different scale in Alaska, right? And so it is like, everything's just like, okay, this is crazy. It's like unforgiving territory, right? But it is so awesome. But like listening to that, now you guys know when I started the episode, and I'm like, Troy and Misty are always on the go. They don't take a rest. I don't think they sleep. Like it's like listening to that story is like exhausting, right? It's like you guys are like just go, 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 go. But and you were doing a lot of the work yourself, right? You know, I know you've worked with some amazing designers and some people that have helped along the way, but I mean, you're really rolling up your sleeves, and Troy, you're moving out to a lot of these properties for weeks at a time to get some of this stuff done.
Yeah. I spent a month and a half in Alaska and about 3 weeks in Georgia.
Yeah.
On that last one, we just closed on one. About a month ago.
So our last one, we actually went back to Helen, Georgia, because the builder of our first one reached out to us and said, "Hey, I know you guys are in short-term rentals. I've got a lot. And we, if you want to build one from ground up, are you guys interested?" So it was a fantastic one of having built-in equity right from the start, but then also being able to build and design the experience from ground up. So that kind of tops out our 5 and brought us, as you said, zigzagging across the country. But we have doubled down at least once.
That's like almost a little shocking to me that we like went back to the same market, and so because you've had success in all of them. But here's the thing: all different markets, all different types of markets, and you hit on it, a minute ago, Misty, where you said it's about having the best experience, not always about the best property, right? When you're on the water, or you're on a lake, or you're on a ski hill, you're on the beach, that allows you to get. You're going to pay more for that stuff, but it allows you to get sometimes a little lazy with the experience because you make up for it with your proximity, but not always, because you got to remember that there's other people on that same ski hill. There's other people on that same beach. But when you really understand what you guys are talking about and really dialing in, because we are in the experience economy, that's what we sell. That's what we're doing. Right. And so when you guys dial that in and you do so beautifully, and it's so fun to see your properties come to life, because that's exactly what they do. They just there's no accident that the property doubled its revenue from the previous year after you guys put your touch on it, right? And if there's anything that I could put an exclamation point on, it's on that. And it's because it is something that everybody in this game can do. Everybody. Doesn't matter what your property is, where it's located, you can always elevate the experience. And when you really try to dial it in, and just like, so many people, 9 out of 10 people would have taken that property in Helen that was furnished with Pottery Barn furniture and looked really nice. And it was really a great congruent design, but it just wasn't what you were looking for, right? It wasn't the experience. It didn't fit with that German theme that you really wanted. And so you took it out. Most people are not taking that furniture out, right? They're going to say, I'm going to just work around it. But it makes all the difference in the world in the revenue and the experience that you're creating, and somebody being able to look at your property and say, I want that one instead of the other one, right? And so those are things you guys are doing on every one of your properties too. And so you guys always know we post the property links in the show notes so you guys can see. I always say success leaves clues. So you got to go check out what successful investors are doing and just reverse engineer it. Say, hey, listen, this is what's working. Let's try to copy it. But the point is, those are the things that are working, right? And it's been so fun to just watch you guys on your journey, right? Just be able to see, like, it's like you guys had that goal of I want a property a year, and we're buying a property a year, and we just keep doing it, right? And we find a way to make it happen. I mean, we don't get overwhelmed. You don't get, I know everybody gets stressed. Everybody has those overwhelmed days, but you guys just know how to handle it, right? It's like how you process it and handle it is awesome, and it just continues to come together. Now, all of that building and all of that, building the portfolio was not without some hiccups and some challenges, right? And there were some major challenges that would be, the at days that just takes the wind out of your sails, right? We have those days too. What are some of those things that you had to overcome along the way throughout that process?
Yeah, I think that's been a big lesson for us, as probably anybody in this industry, is like just being okay with the pivot, right? And just always looking for that pivot, because we have had on every project, and I'm sure every person telling their story would have those moments, right? But we've had everything from in Alaska, we couldn't get a countertop. The countertop, there's like one guy in town, and guess what? He was changing shops. So he was going to be out of the, basically out of works for 2 months. Well, we couldn't wait 2 months to finish the counter. So we kind of took a pivot, something really different, but we actually had an epoxy countertop made. Now, is it perfect? Is exactly what we wanted? No. But did it work? And did it give that overall experience and the look? It did. So it's like taking little moments like that. We've had, as you know, our Colorado one, we've had some, some different issues with, my gosh, maintenance and floods, right? Like there's been, a little drip in the ceiling and you don't know where it's coming from. That even happened in our new one, which is odd, right? You just close on it and it has roof issues. So you're getting these phone calls, maybe not the best opportune time, but you've got a team built in that helps you. You've got the property managers, the cleaners, the maintenance people. And as long as you're okay to the pivot, it always works out. You just can't get caught up in those like small little things.
And you can't let it get to you or ruin. You can't let it ruin your day. You just move on to the next deal, like the septic tank at the Alpine up in Colorado. It was bad. It went bad. And so we just got a new septic. It cost a lot of money, but it made sense still with the numbers, and the hurricane comes through Florida. Let's hope it doesn't hit the house, because if it does, we're going to be rebuilding, type deal. And we got lucky there. But we know it's probably going to happen again this year, right? And so we just got to make sure that we just stay on top of our game, and we make sure property managers take care of what needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. When the longer term vision you have, like when you're looking at it for the long term, right? It's saying, oh man, septic system failed, and we got to put a new one in, and it's expensive, but guess what? We're going to have this property for 10 years or whatever that is, right? You give yourself a longer term time horizon. It's easier to stomach some of those big expenses too, especially when they're capital expenses like that, because it's just going into the property, right? And that's an asset that we have, right? It's not like you're just wasting the money. It's just saying, hey, listen, now I've got a property with a brand new septic tank, and we can increase the capacity if we need to, or whatever we had to do to upgrade it at that time. So you try to look and navigate that. Let's talk about management, because those who listen to me know that I'm a big proponent of hiring my management team. Like I hired that all out, and there's not a lot of people in our industry as coaches that teach people that's what they should do, because it's a big expense, right? Let's be honest. If I'm trying to tell somebody they should invest into this game, and I remove 25 or 30% off the expense line items, that pro forma looks a hell of a lot better. Right. And so that's why nobody talks about it. Everybody says, hey, you should just manage them. It's super easy. I don't believe it is that easy. I do believe that I can move a lot faster, and I get a bigger bang for my buck by spending my time doing what you guys are doing, which is building a portfolio and creating these experiences, and then letting somebody else deliver that. But talk to me a little bit about that with you guys, because you are moving really fast. And and how have you decided to manage these properties?
I think you just nailed it right there. Is like the whole adage of like, you can go fast alone or you can go far together. Right. And that's kind of brings it back to the principle of why we have property managers too. So what Troy and I have really found, and I think it's similar to you, is we like these boutique owners, right? We like the ones who probably have 30, maybe even 20 or less properties, because what we found is they know our property intimately. They care about it. It means a lot to them. They have enough systems in place to be a fantastic, very localized provider. So that's what we found. And I'll tell you, property managers change over time, right? Our Alaska one, he's phenomenal, but he's moving. He's moving to Kansas. If anybody in Kansas needs a great one. So, we're going to be on the hook to find somebody new, but it's just making those connections, finding the right person that really sees your end goal the same way. If you're all aligned on like your end goal of providing the best customer experience, everybody flourishes.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And that's how 100% my feel and thoughts on it as well. I look for those smaller boutique local managers that, like you said, they know your property intimately. They have such a small portfolio that they are very interested in maximizing each individual property in their portfolio as well. And so if we can help them, give them an asset that has a great experience, help them maximize it, they're really interested in doing that. We're not just a number in a couple hundred property portfolio, right? And so, and I'm 100% in agreement that 20 to 30 number or less is a really good number that I always look for personally. And so and you're right, they change or they get bought up, right? Some of the big, that happens too. Like you love your property manager, they're this small boutique company and they know your property. And then all of a sudden Vacasa comes in and buys them up. And now they're part of that group. And you're like, I don't really like that. I don't really like that. The new, conglomerate that came in. And so you just have to pivot. It's one of those things that changes and moves around, but they're out there, right? And we search them, especially as mainstream as short-term rentals have become. 4 or 5 years ago or beyond that, it was harder to find good property managers. There's enough options now in most markets, but you're going to find it's some small markets, they leave like Alaska, right? You're going to have markets like that where you don't have 50 property managers to choose from up there, right? It's going to be a smaller group of people, but you're going to find something.
It's true. And we're on our third one in 2 years, right? So we've had 2 fantastic ones. Now we'll be on our third one, and we might have to talk someone into it.
Yeah.
We've been known to do that. But if they have a good property that they're already running,
Yes.
It's not usually a lot for them to take on a second. But to your point, we've watched and we've built businesses with people, which is super fun. We've had some property managers that we were one of their first properties in Florida and Colorado. And as you said, they also do it really well. So guess what? They've grown their business.
Yeah.
And that's probably the other lesson we've had is having a portfolio now for 5 years. There's a lot of work to do continually on those properties that we set up 4 or 5 years ago, just to ensure you've still got the right team and that you're still in alignment with what your goal is. That's probably been a big lesson for us is the properties 4 or 5 years ago, keeping your eye on maintenance, management, cleaners, right? Making sure that the experience stays the same as day one.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a little bit about, because you just briefly mentioned it, but I think it's a question I get this question a lot. And so I'd love you to expand on. We talk about how to find some of these property managers and they're just owners, right? And like you said, sometimes we look for the top performing properties and their owners out there, and we'll reach out, and many times they're willing to take on another property, and before you know it, you build them a little business. And so talk a little bit about that, because that's something that a lot of people don't realize is available out there.
Yeah. So Troy has been known to find some in really unique places. I'll tell you one of the hacks, and I think a lot of people do this now, it's becoming more common, but one of the hacks that I've always used is, right, who's in the top of the market. Yeah. But I like to find the people that they may only have 1 or 2 listings, and then you just ping them on Airbnb or Vrbo, and you do act like you're a guest. Some people do get upset with it, but if they're interested, they respond back to you, and you just get a conversation going. But Troy found a really great way in our Alaska one that's totally different.
It was so weird. I mean, I was on the phone with the hot tub store, and the manager was on the phone with me, and we just started talking. And I just try to talk to people and find about their day or whatever. And come to find out, he owned a short-term rental, and he was looking to expand his management. And that's how we found that guy. You just never know where you're going to find him. Yeah. And he's awesome. He was a great property manager.
One of the best we've ever had. I mean, he's phenomenal. Yeah. And I think it was just that conversation, right? To when you start to ask them questions about how they see property management, you quickly can tell if you're in alignment. If they're focused on the guest or talking a lot about the guest, if they're starting to talk about, amenities and dollars and cents, then we know that they're not the right property manager. But if they're talking about experience, they're talking about anything that they'll do to make that guest have a great stay, then we've got a really good partner.
Yeah, and if they have their own place, you can look it up. You can tell by the reviews if these people understand
how many times are their names mentioned in their
exactly.
reviews.
Yeah. Right? Are other people saying great things about them, right? That's one of the first things we look at. And so it's a great point to make. And because a lot of times people are like, man, I'm in a smaller market. I don't know where to reach out, or I can't find any property managers here. There's plenty of places to go look. Start with some of the top properties. Start with talking with local vendors that you're using and working with that are in that space, like a hot tub. It's like, who knows that you have a conversation before you know it, you're like, it comes up that he's trying to build a little portfolio on the management side. And you just don't know where you're going to find them. But you don't find them by sitting there complaining that you can't find them, right?
You're never going to find them that way. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Somebody always knows someone, right? You just got to keep asking questions.
Absolutely. Guys, this is so I always ask, like, because when you rolled out long-term rentals, they were good to you. Long-term rentals were a good investment for you as far as a financial investment, right? And like people always hear me say, you're never going to hear me talk bad about real estate. I love real estate in general. For, the average American to build wealth, I think is by far the biggest tool. But every asset class has pros and cons. We like short-term rentals just because of the things that we're talking about today. But since you guys have pivoted over, I think I know the answer to this, but are you glad you did? Are you glad you went all in on this? Because it's a lot more work than the long-term rentals were. It's more work involved. Are you having fun with it, or are you because I always think you guys are having fun, but I just want to know, are you really having fun with it?
Yeah, I'm already having
fun. I'm going to stop and ask each other that.
It's our anniversary today of 19 years. So you can tell.
That's awesome. I'm so happy you're spending with us. Congrats. Right? That's awesome.
Yeah. This is how much we love what we do. I mean, it's, we just got a really cool testimonial, review from one of the properties. And it was actually that first setup that we just closed in Georgia. And it was really sweet because it was the first time that she put in her review, first time she could ever afford to stay in an Airbnb on her own. She always had to rely on her husband or whatever, but it's stories like that. She felt empowered, and she had an experience that she was able to give her family that she never thought was possible. It's those kind of stories. That's why we love this. You're so much more connected to why you're doing what you're doing versus the long-term rental. So yes, we are having a blast, and it's been a wild ride this year, right? But at the end, like you said, it's just, you always smile through it because we get to do what we love.
That's awesome. I love it. Are you, Troy, are you echoing? Are you having fun? I want to make sure
we
you're
have
still
a great
having
time.
fun.
That story that Misty told, there's a million of them. People traveling after COVID to see their grandkids. We have someone getting married in Alaska in September on our deck. There's all these stories that we created that experience for people. That's satisfying. That's what drives us. And obviously, as far as the money is concerned, short-term rentals is way more profitable and just satisfying overall. So yeah, we're having a great time.
That's awesome, and I love it. I when you just said that story about that the lady that first time she did that on her own. I get goosebumps. That's what I love about this game too. When you read the stories and we're part of that story now, right? All of that time and effort and those months that you stayed at the properties and you fixed them up and you thought about that experience, and then you realize that experience meant so much to somebody at a very specific time in their lives, whether it it's an anniversary, whether it's a reunion, whether it's a wedding, and they share that with us. There is something that's not something money can buy, right? But that is something that is so fulfilling to hear those stories and just be a small part of that experience for them. And it makes you want to do it again. It makes you want to continue to raise the bar on the experience and elevate it for everybody. And it's just, the money is great, right? And ultimately we get attracted for investments for the money side of it. But there's these other things about short-term rentals. And you hit a nail right on the head with that experience. And then when you get the feedback of the experience, right? We talk so much about it on the front end of that's the business we're in. That's what we need to deliver. But when you get that feedback, and it's not just, hey, we had a great time, thanks so much for a great property. And they're sharing some of these reviews that people share with you. They're like intimate, very emotional type of responses to say this was a huge deal for me, right? And and there's just something that I can't really explain it until somebody goes through it. And you guys, it's a big deal for you guys as well. But that's why you do so well at it, right? Because you do care about that.
Right. We definitely, in the beginning, we look at these homes and Misty's really the number person. And she goes, yeah, I think this market's going to be good, right? And then we lead with guest experience. What can we do to make an experience for these people? And that's how we set up the property. That's how we do everything from that point on. And we just know that it's going to equate to cash flow and those reviews coming in. I mean, they're priceless. And so that's why we continue to do it.
That's awesome. I love it. I love these conversations. I feel bad that you're spending your anniversary on a podcast, but I'm so grateful.
You want to come to dinner?
If I could be there, I would be okay. I'm going to send you guys off to dinner. So we'll You got to. Hopefully, you have some reservations after this.
We do. But if you were in town, you'd be welcome to come.
I'll crash your anniversary dinner, right? You know what our anniversary dinners revolve around now is like ever since we've had kids, like our anniversary is always with the kids. Teresa and I never, since we've had kids, we don't have anniversary dinners without the kids. So it's always the four of us.
That's exactly it. You could probably hear them. They're running by the door.
Yeah, they're getting ready to go, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, guys, before we stop, first, Troy, we didn't even talk about this, but you're in this. I mean, we have a lot of conversations on this podcast about taxes, and, right? Cost seg and all that stuff. And just so you guys know, Troy does cost segregation. Like if I say it, cost segregations. He's done my cost segregations for me, and he works with a lot of our Vodyssey clients. Those of you that are really trying to take advantage of the tax side of this, which is huge. And so, Troy, I want to point people in your direction for that. How do they find you? I mean, that is a hot topic on this. We didn't really dive into it, but a lot of people, that's a big deal for them.
Yeah, it's a strategy that we personally use. We've done it every year for 5 years. So I definitely 100% believe in it. I'm contracted with CSSI. They're the largest engineering firm in the country. You know, we follow all IRS protocols, including a site visit, you know, with all that kind of stuff. And if you go to Cost Seg Advantage, so just segadvantage.com. That's my website. And then there's a form to fill out for free property analysis, you know, and I get you that, and we can certainly talk about whatever. Yeah. You know, Vodyssey members have my cell phone number listed. They call me all the time. I talk to them just directly.
Yeah, you work with a lot of our Vodyssey family. Myself personally, it's a huge advantage. I know you guys do it on all of your properties. And so those of you that are listening, I'll make sure I put that link in the show notes as well, so you can reach out to Troy and talk to him. It's a critical piece of that puzzle if you were going to try to write off these taxes and you want to do it correctly, right? You know, this is a full engineered study where there's site visits on, and these guys do a really good job with it. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't end without making sure that we show that resource, because that's a topic we didn't talk a lot about today, but we talk a lot about on other episodes.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. You know, it's a big advantage for people, tax advantage. So real estate's great for that. So this is a good way to take advantage of it.
Allowed us to take our nest egg and roll it forward, because we get that question a lot. Like, how did you do 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah. That's how.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because somebody's listening thinking, man, they just must have got, sold a business or have sitting on piles of cash, right? But it's
no water utilities.
Being able to take that one down payment and then roll it in and roll it in and roll it into that next property and the next property, and you do that over and over, you can really accelerate your wealth building journey and building that portfolio by taking advantage of this, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have yet to take on any partners on any of our homes, but I think that might be one of our next steps, is we might be open to partnering up with people. So that's kind of what we're looking at now.
Awesome. I would never think that the slowdowns in the future, and I would be really disappointed if there was. Just so you guys know, because
we're going to take a year off.
If I get tired, I just say, what would Misti and Troy be doing right now? They wouldn't be slowing down. So, you guys, listen, I want you to know how much I love you. I appreciate you. I'm so proud of you. It's been so fun watching your journey over the last 5 years. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And I know we've shared it before. We're kind of getting an update now, and it's really fun to have these conversations. We'll continue them. And I appreciate you letting me be part of this journey and letting everybody else listen in on our conversations. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks so much, Sean. Glad our paths crossed years ago, and excited just to keep it going.
Absolutely. It's so much fun. And those of you listening, we also know how valuable your time is. And we're going to get Troy and Misti out of here today on their anniversary to go to dinner reservations. But we always appreciate you spending your time with us as well. If you don't mind, if you know anybody else that would like to be a part of these conversations, share the show. I don't run ads or sponsorships on the show, so the only way it grows is if you guys share it. And so if you like it, somebody else that would, leave us a thumbs up, a review on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, and share it over to that person that you think would like to be a part of these conversations as well. And the final and most important thing that I always ask you guys at the end of every episode is pick that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.